just a first warning to everybody. I think we have a virus going on. At least all the speakers are having a flu. So basically, let's put my slides on. Okay. Yeah. Why everyone speaking Apish makes your whole business more agile? That's my topic, or that's the topic that Travis and others were kind of suggesting to me. The idea is that we have had an evolution, as everybody has been telling in the previous keynote speaks and by other speakers. And I think that we are kind of in a evolutionary state that we have to learn to speak about technology in a more user-friendly way, more understandably by all the people in the company, all the people in the customers. Last speaker in the other room was actually talking about this, or the speakers were talking about this, that how to make APIs human understandable for also those people in the companies who don't speak tech, and how to make the tech speak human. So here comes Homo Apitus or something like that. And about me and PlanMill, I've been working with the software development and integration since 2000, approximately. And I have experience from public sector as well as private. And I'm not a tech, or like I can code when the guys at work let me code, which is not often, but still. And but I'm kind of like used to speaking about techie stuff to customers and students, and to try to make it understandable. And our API is, well, the second version of our API is currently accessible from MuleSoft's Anypoint. We did look at other portals and other platforms at the moment. We love MuleSoft, even, or especially because they have those cute mules, you know, the toys. And there has been some plugging going on related to our API in a like API Suomi, which is API Finland blog, especially because of or about the reasons why we chose RAML as the specification and documentation way for our API, or the API 1.5. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a PlanMill so that you understand what is the context of where I'm coming from and what kind of API I'm talking about. But feel free to like get the free trials if you want to. But the idea is that we have this ERP system, and it's an ERP for humans. So it's like a professional service business ERP, and it's web-based. It's in cloud as well as in on-premise. And this is a little bit of facts about PlanMill so that you understand that we have 25 people and we have 100 customers, and they are all over the place in a lot of countries, including Sweden and other Nordic countries. And there are some customers of ours. And this is kind of where I started my speech from in Helsinki, that in spring in the tour. Just to give you a reference, that our system has been alive since 1988, coming from Nokia, like all good things in Finland, or used to, or something. And it started out in Nokia as an in-house system, and then it kind of evolved through various purchases and buyouts into an independent software. And we have gone through most of the big technologies that there has been over time, and loads of integrations and loads of customizations. And then happened the API 1.0. So this was 2009, and APIs were not very common then. I mean, we were basically the only ERP or like business software in Finland at that time to have an API. And there were not so many examples of great or even good APIs. And so we kind of had all kinds of old-fashioned integrations like files and XML and all kinds of other dirty words going on around. And then one day, our developers came to me and said that, Marjukka, we have just made an API. Okay, what is an API? I had no clue. Nobody else had a clue. Well, it's this cool thing that makes you really, makes it really easy to integrate other systems to our system, because we hate doing these integrations. But we don't quite know what to do with it or who would use it, but everybody seems to have an API. It's a cool thing. Everybody was like 10 biggest companies in the world or something, but no matter. And so the first thing was that they had developed this API. It was kind of REST-ish. And the idea was that now we had to figure out what to do with it. And maybe usually stuff goes the other way around, but this is how it happened with us. So obviously, because we didn't have the user stories, we didn't have the customer need at first, so a lot of things got done not so optimally. There was this one guy from Sweden during lunch who was asking me, how many times did you have to recode everything? Because they had just done their first API and had to do a lot of re-engineering to it. So basically, I told him that, yeah, well, with the first API, we kind of did it wrong in the first place. So, but we didn't understand that until like 12 months after or 24 months after. So it doesn't matter. But now that when we started doing our new API, we started in a completely other direction. So we first basically gathered all the customer needs. I mean, we had a lot of companies using the first version of our API. And they had been able to do things with it, even though it was XML and there were all kinds of things wrong with it, like it was exposing a lot of our database table names and column names and everything out to the open, which was stupid. I mean, how many of you want to work with an API which was basically saying like, okay, you were talking about projects. You wanted to get projects out of the system. But sometimes you had to code using project ID, sometimes with a task ID, and sometimes even with a task hierarchy task ID. Like, who would even understand that all of those meant a project? Nobody. So then we actually got all our customers who were using our current API, and we got them into the same room, and we got them to show everybody else what they have been doing with our API. And there were a lot of different kinds of things. There was a Confluence plugin, there was a CRM lead generation website application, and there was time reporting applications and all kinds of funny things that we hadn't even thought of anybody doing with it. And they could give us a lot of good feedback. And what we did was that we had both the like business manager and the developer that had been using our API come together from each of the companies into our workshop, and to get kind of the business side of it. What are you going to do with it? What have you been doing with it? And also, like, what were the actual coding problems when you started implementing stuff with it? And so we revised our process, and we started with this research project and customer and partner needs and insights. And then we started piloting with different kinds of technologies on how to implement the API. We compared notes on like API documentation, specification, platform, backend techniques, like how to produce decent JSON, for example, out of our backend, and all kinds of things like that. And we took each layer and we took all the best practices and all the technologies, and we had a couple of trainees and a couple of seniors try them each out and then come to the conclusions that these are the things that work for us. And then we had to make the final decisions about what kind of language should our API speak. So like, okay, first things first, like JSON or XML, but obviously nowadays JSON is kind of the thing. But then of course, what kind of terms, what kind of like ontology or like basically what kind of names should we use for different things? One of the problems that we faced with the API was actually not a problem with our API itself, but the problem that the people using, the developers using our API hadn't got a clue what our system was actually doing. So all the customers first put the youngest developer with least experience about anything, like coding or business apps or the processes of the company or anything else. They put that guy to integrate our system with another system. So good idea, a learning experience, but do you know how many headaches those guys got? I mean, there were a couple of theses done using our API, and all those theses were like starting with the words, I had so much trouble because I didn't know what the heck this thing was even supposed to be doing. Because, I mean, right out of school, 23, 24-year-old guys, sorry, but usually they don't have a lot of experience with invoices or projects or things like that. And then they had to make two systems actually work together and understand what the business processes were doing, because they were just pushed there and told by the product owners and the consultants and business decision makers that you are now supposed to be making these things work together because this is tech. This is coding. You know this stuff. I don't need to know anything about this. This is supposed to be really easy because this is an API and I've heard that APIs are really easy. So the first problems are usually that, okay, there are a lot of different names for the same child, so to speak. So we have customer, we have company, we have person, we have decision maker for like accounts and contacts, which is the stuff that is called in our system. And in other systems, something like an opportunity, like somebody is making a sales process for some customer or would-be customer. Sometimes it's called in other systems like a lead or deal or sales project or something like that. And you have to understand that in our system it's called opportunities. So when a business decision maker and the techie type of developer are talking about which endpoint to use, it's not that easy if there is no understanding of what does this endpoint do or how am I supposed to be using it and what does the business owner actually want me to do with it. But on the other hand, when we managed to solve that problem, when we made our API more accessible, better documentation generated directly out of the RAM specification, and with a little bit of explanations of what the stuff was actually meant for. So then we got to the point where the business owners could actually say that, hey, as a project manager, I want to create new projects whenever, for example, we get a new project or a new customer into the company. I want to create projects for it, and I want the project to be created to our Jira, our like ERP, like PlanMill system or like our financial system at the same go. And I want it to also go to our version control and wherever. So that was the business need. And then, of course, somebody had to code it at some point, but it was much easier to talk with API terms. So we had to teach our consultants, and still do, have to teach that, okay, posting is something that, creates stuff, or maybe even updates stuff. And that this means that, okay, you have this kind of information, that you have a project called this and this, which to you guys is probably like totally obvious. You haven't seen PlanMill at all, but everybody could understand that, okay, this is creating a project with that name and start date. But of course, for a business person, it's not that obvious, but you can teach them that this is what it means, so that next time they can tell you that in an API term, so spot it already from the API documentation. Yeah. Okay, there is this theoretical theorem that says that if you put infinite amount of monkeys into the same room and give them typewriters, at some point with an infinite time, they will produce something like poems or books or something like that. Well, sometimes it feels that the same thing has applied to a lot of integrations. If you put enough of coders, enough of business people into the same room, lock the door, and like wait and pour enough money so that everybody's happy and there's enough coffee, then out comes this wonderful integration that solves all the problems. And, well, yeah, probably. But what we have seen is that usually it takes a lot of hours, like 40 to 60 hours at least, for a new integration to happen in a traditional way, because it takes a lot of cups of coffee for people to understand what is the data, what is the format, what is the actual need, how often, and all kinds of things. And like sometimes there is a lot of participants in the integration projects. For example, one case, are there any Danish people here? Okay, sorry. This is going to hurt maybe, but anybody heard about a like ERP called SAP? Yeah, okay. So SAP and Danish people. Yeah, okay. Once upon a time, there was an integration with a customer of ours based on Finland, and we were trying to integrate their SAP to our PlanMill. And everything was fine until there was a subcontractor from Finland that was coming to the rescue for the customer to do the integration. But that subcontractor was subcontracting some of the parts of the development from a Danish company. And so we had like Finnish people trying to communicate with each other. Difficult. Even more difficult when there were these Danish people, and everybody was communicating in emails about this SAP integration, and nobody had a clue. And if we had at that moment an API documentation saying that if you want invoices out of our system, you use this kind of endpoint and you get this kind of stuff out, and do whatever you want to do with it, well, it wouldn't have made like everybody happy, but most likely we wouldn't have had to have like this Danish-Finnish conversation in emails about the wonders of SAP and invoices, which like so many scary words that I'm sorry. So, yeah. But when we now have the API, the good thing is that we can get our customers and partners develop cool stuff for us. They have actually done quite amazing applications with our current API and our like now starting to move to the new API. And basically they are building applications out of the sheer fun of coding, because they are IT companies, most of them, and they want their kind of applications, and they are inventing cool things that they can do and use with their applications that you can't currently do with PlanMill. And then they are telling us that, hey, this is how we actually want to use the system. Maybe somebody else wants to use the system also like this. You can take this, what we coded, take it as a model and put it into our like the core PlanMill. Or let's develop this together and use the API and see what we come up with. And like with enough donuts and stuff, we have developed quite a lot of nice things using the API together with our customers and partners. So it has made a difference, and it's like 20 times as fast to develop with API on both sides, except compared to the old integrations. So just really quickly, the idea that API really changed the way we work, and it changed the language which we used to work. So basically, we do need to do now API support, and we are training our salespeople to sell the API. Instead of showing this is a nice user interface, they show this is a nice API documentation. Why don't you buy already? And then sometimes people have to be introduced to new ideas. So, okay, somebody at some point had this idea that apes should be going to space. And probably people thought that they were crazy. So basically learning a new way of thinking does require sometimes sweat and tears, but that's the thing that you have to do to get the whole company talking and using the APIs and understanding that you can actually do useful things with an API compared to an old-fashioned file export or import. And that's just so difficult sometimes for some people. And that's kind of one of the problems. So presumption is the mother of all, screw-ups and all kinds of nasty things. And that works from the developer side as well as from the consultant or the business owner side. So sometimes business owners assume things that you can't do or can do stuff with the API, but also the problem with developing our own API, the new version of it, was that we were presuming that we had so many back-end problems in our core system that we couldn't do it. And once we rethought everything, we actually found out that we could do it, and it only took, basically, I'm skipping a few slides here, it took 6 two-week sprints to get the new improved version out. And this is a picture which I don't know if it shows up there, but about our RAM specification from the Anypoint editor, which was really useful in the first place so that we could start coding the UI and start deciding on the endpoints basically before even coding any code into the back end. And then we could also create the tests for the API basically up front using, for example, stuff like rest assured and mocking services. And this is, I think, the end.